All right, it looks like we are live. So welcome everyone. Of course, people will continue to filter in and that's perfectly okay. Welcome to today's webinar, Holidaze, How to Navigate the Joys and Challenges of the Holiday Season. This webinar is sponsored by Manitowoc Cranes and is a part of our Safety, Health, and Wellness series. As you've probably noticed, we've had quite a few webinars over the past couple months, COVID related, just keeping everyone up to date on things as they evolve and change. So today's presenter is Rachel Fruin from Holy Family Memorial. And Rachel is a licensed clinical therapist with more than 7 years of experience working in the mental health field. She joined Holy Family Memorial Behavioral Health in 2017 and provides therapy for a wide variety of conditions, including drug and alcohol dependency, depression, anxiety, grief, and trauma. Rachel enjoys connecting with others and helping individuals discover the positive things they have to share with the world. She earned her Master's of Science degree in counseling and undergraduate degree in psychology from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. In her spare time, Rachel enjoys reading mystery novels, gardening, biking, traveling, and spending time with her family. So with that, I will turn it over to Rachel, who will give us an update on how to navigate the joys and challenges of the holiday season. Take it away, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Abby. And I appreciate everybody coming today. Hopefully, some of the things that I can share are kind of helpful. I tried to touch on a wide variety of different topics because there are so many different pieces and parts to this, especially this year. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add them and I'll answer them as I can. If I don't get to them till the end, I do apologize, but I'll definitely try to touch on any questions you may have. So I'm just going to go ahead right now and go ahead and go over to the PowerPoint, so you might not be able to see me for a little bit. Oops. So I do apologize. It looks like it's going to be a little bit of a challenging going back and forth for some reason, so I do apologize. All right. So again, Holidaze, as she said, I'm Rachel Fruin. I am more than happy to go ahead and be here with you and go over a couple of things. The first part that I wanted to touch on was just the basic safety. Again, especially this year with COVID, cleanliness, health, all of that is a big, big part of the holidays. Certainly with the weather changes and the colder weather coming in, we're going to often see a lot of health problems anyway, and just cold and sniffles and things like that coming in. So some of the suggestions from the CDC for your holiday gatherings this year is just going to be, first of all, to think about where they've been. So if you have family coming from areas of high concentration, it's probably a good idea to just touch base and see what kind of precautions they've been taking. As rude as it may or may not seem, asking if they've come in contact with people, doing those kind of basic screening questions too, so that you're making sure that the people that are coming into your home, if you're having that at your home, are people who hopefully have a lower risk of transmitting anything to you or the rest of your family. I've talked to a couple of families that plan on going ahead and all getting COVID tested before they come together. Just a reminder, it usually takes, I think it's 2 to 4 days about to get your test back. So if that's something you're interested in doing and want everybody to do is having that test, just make sure you give it a few days so that you have a chance to know whether it's positive or negative. Again, suggestion this year is going to be doing pre-quarantining, so attempting a couple weeks before the big holidays, a little late for Thanksgiving, but especially for Christmas and New Year's, trying to stay home as much as possible, staying out of public spaces, things like that to make sure that you're keeping yourself safe. Again, airflow is always a big deal this time of year. If you happen to have like the over the stove vents that vent outside, that can be a wonderful source of fresh air for you and your family this year. Keep that on all day. It'll help provide the airflow, get out some of the droplets to provide a little extra safety and protection for that. Of course, cleaning, sanitizing disposable utensils. If you're trying to do an office party and trying to do something to really help your fellow staff members to be comfortable, to be safe, to be happy, Secret Santa is always great. Virtual office parties are great. If you're going to try to do it in an office setting, it's not a bad idea to try to put all the food in one room and almost have like little menus of all the food that's available, see what everybody wants, and then have one person making the plates versus having the normal potluck type line, so that we're providing as little contact as possible so that we're not taking as many risks again with that. Some of the biggest parts of the holidays are going to be the gift giving. And of course, the food that we just talked about. So with the gift giving portion, just a couple, hopefully fairly practical tips that'll help. And just kind of looking through and preparing for this, some of the information I found too was a really good and practical reminder for every single year, and especially this year, is to be a little financially friendly to yourself. I know of people who sometimes are spending 6, 7, or 8 months after Christmas just still paying off their credit cards and paying it back, especially this year when some people really have had a lot of financial struggles. Being aware not only for yourself when you're making up your lists, but also when you're giving it to, that we're not really setting our sights too high and strapping ourselves too much there too, so that we're not providing the extra stress. I tend to come from a really crafty family, so the first thing that I thought of is homemade gifts. It can be a really good way to not only use your talents, it's really good for using the creative side of your mind is really good for anxiety. So not only are you going to save a little money if you're making something homemade, there's that special thoughtfulness portion that grandmas tend to enjoy. And then also it gives us something else to focus on, something to do, and something we can control in this year of a lot of chaos. So that's definitely something that I would encourage you to think about, again, whether it's office setting, whether it's in your personal homes. And looking at too, if there's a way we can meet needs. So maybe if you're not a super crafty person and you still don't want to spend an arm and a leg, what might someone need? Might it be a couple bucks toward a utility bill? Maybe it's going to be a gift card to get some basic purchases. Maybe it's going to be a paper Christmas where you're getting toilet paper and paper towel. Just really, again, using that creative side of your mind to think about what you can get for people if you're not a super crafty or too crafty person yourself. There's always a suggestion to try to support local businesses. Again, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, I realize, and a lot of our businesses I know are struggling. Or maybe not struggling, but it's always nice to have that little bit of extra revenue and not to forget about all the wonderful resources we do have in this community for gifts. Just like with people, it's not a bad idea to, if you're able to get your gifts ahead of time, set them aside. If you're doing Secret Santa in the office setting, maybe if there's just a room that you can put all the gifts in before it starts and just kind of filter and give everybody their own area so the gifts stay there for a while, so we're not bringing things in every day, not having as much contact and having them out there as much can be helpful. Outside of the office setting, going back in more of a home personal setting, I know a lot of households like to do the round robin where you bring your gifts over to somebody's house, see what they've received, and you're all going to multiple houses on the holidays. Of course, this year, with trying to have as little contact as possible, that might be kind of tricky. There's no reason why you couldn't potentially drop off gifts on someone's porch though, and then maybe you can open them virtually and try to do it that way where you're still trying to have as much of the holiday feel without having as much risk of there being contamination, of course. Fortunately, we can use our technology, try to do as much as possible, still being able to see each other's gifts. Just because we're not there in person, just because you're maybe not going to be in 6, 7, 8 houses in one day, doesn't mean we can't still have that connection piece. One of the big things that I see year after year after year for people who might not have family close by, or maybe they don't have a lot of family left or a lot of social connections, is they view the holidays like it's just another day. I strongly discourage that. If you see anybody, especially whether it be coworker, colleague, family member, friend, where they just really have that low mood, if it's just another day, I'm gonna sit at home, I'm gonna make myself a sandwich, and that's gonna be my holiday. Try if you can to encourage them not to do that, because it just really breeds the depression and can kind of keep us stuck, which is a big risk. Again, any time that the holidays roll around for the year. It's not all sunshine and flowers for everybody. It's really, really difficult for some people, even without the COVID and without the extra separation. So I really want to encourage trying to plot that mindset as much as possible. So some ideas to mix it up a little bit, try to make it a little different, would be maybe going for a scavenger hunt. So this could be something where if you have a bigger family, or if you have multiple families, friends, whoever wants to get together to do it, you could do it as an office. Ahead of time, everybody makes up a list of common Christmas decorations. So maybe it would be Santa Claus's snowflakes, creches, whatever it's going to be. And you're going to make this long list, give it to everybody who's going to be doing it, and they each go out in their own vehicle. So you go look for the different decorations, mark them off as you see them. Hopefully somebody riding shotgun or in the back seat is going to do it, not the driver. And then when you find them first, go ahead and call up, and then you win the scavenger hunt. So you're separate, you're in your own vehicles, but you're still doing something together. You're still getting out there, getting out of the house and mixing things up a little bit. Another one would be changing the menu. Again, for some people, they feel very, very stuck. They feel like maybe they must do a very, very traditional Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. And sometimes pulling ourselves out of that and giving ourselves permission to do something different. Because that's really what it is permission to maybe break tradition in a little bit. It can change the mindset a little bit, change the mood. So mental health perspective, that can really, really help. I'm a huge fan of hopping on Pinterest, Googling ideas, maybe looking for, maybe it's going to be a different type of decoration. Maybe it's going to be a different kind of holiday treat that I might want to make. Just getting out there again and breaking out of that mold, breaking out of that track that we're stuck on. And it's going to be different for some people than others. I realize for some people, they are very resilient and coping very well. For some of us, we might not be. So it's really, really important to do something even just a little bit different than we normally do. Doing that thing a little bit different can get us out of that mental trap we've kind of worn in our heads and help mix things up a little bit and help us to recover and cope and be more resilient. For those who aren't aware, there are different area light shows. I know there's always the one in Lincoln Park, which fortunately this time of the year I get to start to see pretty soon through the woods right at my office, which is beautiful and wonderful. There are ones up in Green Bay, there are ones down in Sheboygan. There are other just smaller shows around town, and going and doing that and getting the holiday spirit versus avoiding. The more we find ourselves avoiding, the more we see those around us avoiding, the more negative and low the mood gets. So if we can get ourselves to do those little things, taking those little breaks, it really, really makes a difference. Now, kind of going right into that is going to be some other coping that we can do this time of the year. These come actually from the NAMI website. So NAMI, for those of you who don't know, is a National Alliance for Mental Illness. Actually, these suggestions were for a few years ago, because for many, many people, again, with whether they don't have a lot of supports and or they have mental illness, the holidays are a very, very, very difficult, challenging time. So these are just some really helpful suggestions for any year, and this year more so than ever. As Abby mentioned earlier, I do substance abuse counseling as well. So alcohol is a big thing this time of year, especially, that I really, really want to remind everybody. I know we live in Wisconsin. I know we no longer might have the Budweiser bottles, but we still do have definitely that connection with alcohol in our community and in our state, especially strong. And it's really important to try to limit yourself on alcohol. It is a depressant. It does make our mood worse long-term, even if it seems like it helps for a little bit. So it's really, really important to try to make sure if you're going to have your holiday drinks that it's socially, that you're not sitting by yourself drinking, that maybe you give yourself a 2-drink limit if that's not a problem for you. If it is, you probably want to try to avoid it altogether. Really, really, really important. So, doing fact checking. So around this time of the year, we have plenty of Hallmark movies, plenty of things like that that show us the wonderful, beautiful things that can happen on the holidays. And sometimes the expectations they present are really unrealistic. So for yourselves, for those around you, just reminding them, it's okay to maybe bring that down a notch and really manage those expectations a little bit. Maybe we're not going to be able to take an open carriage ride with a horse through the park on Christmas Eve. Maybe that's not going to be realistic, and that's okay. So what's something that you want out of the holidays or could get out of the holidays that you're not setting yourself up to be disappointed? So setting your sights a little bit lower sometimes can be okay. Physical activity any time of the year is great. I realize the weather's getting colder, the light's getting lower. We don't have as much daytime as we used to. So maybe some of it's going to have to be inside. Maybe it's going to be a gym. Maybe it's going to be going for a walk on your lunch break during the day if you normally sit in your office. Getting that little bit of physical activity helps increase some of the neurotransmitters in our brain, helps us feel a little bit happier, helps us relieve stress. This time of the year, especially, that physical activity is so, so important. And then going right along with it is a mood light. Seasonal depression is a real thing. It affects many, 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 many people. Mood lights used to be this big honking thing you get from a medical supply store and pay a lot of money to rent for a week. Fortunately, now they have little itty bitty portable ones. You can find them online, you can find them in stores, and they help mimic the sunlight. So what they can do is, especially like on days like this morning where it's very, very overcast, I make sure that I turn mine on for 15 to 20 minutes. It helps me wake up. Even if it's not, maybe I'm not severely suicidal and depressed in the winter, but if mood and energy are really, really low, doing that little bit to help boost it for ourselves can help us to do the other things we need to do. It can be a positive snowball effect. So that would be one piece that I'd strongly consider if you're the kind of person where you have very low energy this time of the year. The one really reminder and warning for that would be if you're somebody who's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, talk to your doctor. Sometimes that can have a little bit different effect and there might be different ways that you want to use it. So make sure that you just have that conversation with the doctor, perhaps before you purchase one as well. Earlier in the series that I've done with HFM, we talk a lot about grounding. It's something that some of you, if you've done your own personal therapy, might be familiar with. Grounding is pulling ourselves out of our heads, out of that worry and that kind of rat race of anxiety in our brains into the present moment. So grounding could be something like using a mint or gum to really notice that sense and notice that sensation and be aware of that in the moment. It might be something like, if I'm really stressed, if I'm really worried, I'm going to sit down for a minute. I'm going to notice the chair under me. I'm going to notice my feet on the floor. And I'm really, really going to be aware. It's great for any kind of extreme emotions. So practicing it over and over, the more I practice it, the easier it gets. Initially, it might be a little harder and I might have to keep going, and that's okay. So giving ourselves this permission, giving ourselves those tools ahead of time. And not grounding through everything, not maybe necessarily pulling myself out of my head all the time. It's okay to feel sad. If this is maybe the anniversary of somebody I've lost, or maybe it's my first year or second year or 20th year after a great loss, it's okay to let yourself feel sad. It's okay to let yourself grieve. It can be really helpful and really healing this time of the year sometimes too, to maybe have pictures of family members that we've lost and put them around the table for the holidays, especially maybe if I have a very small family, maybe I'm celebrating alone. Having that sadness and at the same time that remembering versus avoiding really, really can help too. And just last one is, and especially if I'm not going to be able to be around many people or maybe nobody else, being able to look back and notice and think about some of those pleasant times too, even if it feels a little bit sad. It's okay to feel more than one thing at the same time. With some people, the family that they're around might not be the best. I hear the term toxic family thrown around a lot. First of all, I just want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page with what that means. Because again, not every family, not every holiday is going to be a Hallmark holiday. So it's okay to look at the other side too and realize that maybe the family that we have might not be the healthiest. So I'm going to first talk about what it is, and then a little bit too about how we cope with it and how we work with that, especially if it's something where maybe I feel like I have to be there because they're my family. So we've done our precautions, we've been safe, we've done everything, we're going to be together. I'm going to give you some hints on how to do that. So first of all, what toxic family members can entail would be if there's a lot of gossip. So it would be talking behind people's backs. Maybe when I walk in the room, I'm feeling a little paranoid because I'm not sure if they're talking about me or not, because maybe that's something that happens a lot. Or maybe that's going to be the opposite. They're going to come right up to my face and maybe my family member puts me down a lot. Maybe they're constantly talking about the things I'm doing wrong. And really it's hard to have a solid connection and feel comfortable with them if I feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time. Another sign that maybe a toxic, somebody in my family is toxic is if they don't allow me to change. So if I'm recognizing this and I'm working on it and I'm trying to get healthy for myself, whether it's a diagnosed mental illness or maybe I'm just working, maybe I'm working on losing weight, maybe I'm working on any kind of life improvement, maybe I'm sending myself back to school, and then I get pushback from that from my family. If there's a hesitancy for them to allow you to change and grow in positive ways, that's probably a pretty good signal that maybe they're not the healthiest. Not trying to throw anybody under the bus, not trying to call anybody a bad person, but just bringing some awareness, hopefully. And again, I'm realize you can all probably read. I don't want to go down the list too much, and I would just want to draw attention to that abuse being accepted. That's a really, really big one. If I'm in a family where maybe we slap each other all the time, and it's kind of hard. It's not just a joking, playful thing, and that's just normal, and that's what we do. Or we're always giving each other crap. But the giving each other crap isn't playful and fun. It's really, there's an edge to it, and it hurts. And that's okay, and that's what's accepted in the family. That's probably a sign that it's not the healthiest family unit. Same thing with not admitting the past. So just being aware of some of these things, typically the best predictor of somebody being toxic is if we're around them. And there's just a really, really uncomfortable sensation in our gut, or we feel like we're walking on eggshells. That's usually a pretty good sign. Another thing for this too would be, it could definitely be used as a self-check too. So maybe I'm going to look at some of these for myself and really be aware that I'm not being a toxic family member also. So maybe if I'm a little insecure, maybe I'm going to find myself gossiping, or feeling like if somebody's doing well that it's a personal insult to me. Maybe I need to really check myself too, and make sure that I'm being a healthy family member. So it can go that way as well. Now, if you're finding that there are some of these traits in your family and they seem to happen a lot, so maybe not just where somebody poked you in fun and it was goofing around and it only happened once, that isn't necessarily toxic. But if I'm finding that this is happening a lot, then there might be certain things that I might have to do to really cope with it and to be able to be healthy in the family. Step number one is setting boundaries. It sounds so simple. And for those of you who've tried it, it's not always. So the key to setting boundaries is to make sure that what I say I want and what I'm willing to do to uphold that boundary is something I'm actually truly willing to do. I don't want to tell my family that I'm going to cut them all off if they're not going to stop gossiping about me behind my back, and then I won't do it. I want to make sure that when I'm setting a boundary, it is telling them what I expect from them, telling them how it hurts me or makes me feel when they share a certain thing, and then letting them know if this doesn't stop, this is going to be what I'm going to have to do to protect myself, and making sure that it's reasonable and something I can uphold. And again, that communication piece is big. So I'm not just getting upset or walking away or shutting down and not telling anybody why. If they don't know what they're doing, there's no way for them to change it. So I want to make sure that if I haven't already done it 5 million times, that I'm giving them that chance and that I'm letting them know that it bothers me. It's the point where your family members, maybe 1 or 2 family members, or your family really is unhealthy, really feel uncomfortable. Maybe I'm going to decide that it's a good idea for me not to go at all for the family holiday. Unfortunately, this year we have very valid excuses for not going if we choose to. And I'm maybe going to want to really, really think about it. And if I choose not to go, decide, is that going to be something that's going to cause long-term problems? And if it is that something that I'm willing to handle? So very similar to that, setting the boundaries. And a couple more pointers about just how we focus on the facts of not you're being mean to me, but when maybe if you walk up to my husband and you grab him inappropriately, it really bothers me. I'm going to be really specific, and I'm going to be really specific on the things that are difficult for me. And if I'm having a conversation with someone and they're trying to pull me into a fight, I'm really, really going to want to be careful to be very black and white and to be very focused on that. And maybe I'm going to decide that I need to go to the family holiday. I think it would cause really big bad consequences if I were to not go. So I'm going to limit my time. Maybe I'll go for the meal. Perhaps have something planned after where I truly have to go, so I can only spend maybe hour and a half, and that's it. I made my appearance. I can feel okay about it. I've set my limit, and the family will do with it what they will. And that's something that I need to make sure that I'm prepared to handle. And just the last one in here too, that I thought was really helpful to remember too, is to not necessarily try to use the holidays to fix the family. If your family is not perfect, if there are some challenges, sometimes when the family members get together and they haven't seen each other for a while, they like to rehash old wounds and they like to throw it out there and they want to fix it. I would strongly discourage that at the holidays. That's a great time then for, if you realize you're doing it, maybe that's a really good sign that it's time to do some family therapy. maybe those really need to be fixed, and it's better with an objective third party in the room. So much, much better to stop, redirect from that if it's happening at the holidays, and then take the opportunity perhaps to schedule an appointment with somebody and do that in a more professional setting. Really important. And then the last, just two quick things that I wanted to talk about is politics. I know this year with the election and with everything going on, there are many, many, many political discussions and many different views. I just went ahead and I found a couple kind of quick pointers of how to manage this if that comes up. So I'm at the family holiday, maybe my family's super healthy, we're feeling great, but then Uncle Fred brings up politics and we know it's going to be really uncomfortable for everybody. So just some pointers and things you can do to try to help. Again, it's okay, hopefully, for everybody to allow others to have their own opinions. I might have one opinion. That doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's my opinion. It's my opinion, it's my view, and that's okay. And somebody else might have the complete opposite opinion. And it helps to allow them to have that too. It's not a personal dig on me, that's their view. So along with that too, if I'm going to share my opinion, I want to make sure that I'm owning it, that I'm not saying you're wrong, or I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm owning what I believe and why. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe I'm really going to be uncomfortable with it and we need to just completely not even talk about it. Maybe that's going to be one of the boundaries I set, is we're not going to have any political discussions. If it starts, I'm going to walk out of the room, because maybe that's not something that can be done civilly, and that's okay too. And maybe I don't have to talk about it at all too. Like I said, I could walk out of the room. I could maybe sit there and politely listen. And if I don't agree, maybe it's okay for me to just not share at all. So having those options for yourself and thinking about that ahead of time too. So hopefully the more that we have a plan too, the more that we know what we can do and realistically what we can control and focus on what we can control, the more it'll hopefully prepare for some of that as well. And then just the last thing was how to cope with grief. So as I mentioned earlier, that holidays can be a very, very difficult time when we think about everybody we've lost, especially if you've lost someone recently, and especially this year, since the policies and procedures have been so much different. So if you haven't maybe been able to do the normal closure of having a funeral, maybe I'm going to make sure I have a lot of pictures around of somebody that I've lost. Again, whether I put them at the dinner table or hang them up. Maybe it's just going to be in a photo album that I look through. Maybe I'm going to look at a really fun tradition that I used to do with the person that I've lost, or people. Maybe it's going to be multiples. And maybe I'm going to try to maybe make grandma's favorite cookie for Christmas in her memory, or do a favorite gift giving technique, something that's going to remind me of that person, something that's going to honor their memory. So again, I'm allowing myself to feel sad. I'm allowing myself to have that grief, and I'm doing something with it too, so I don't feel so stuck. Always great to talk to other people who love them, know them, share the stories. Even if it's just over the phone, even if it's just virtually, having that connection really, really helps and can help work it through too. Maybe I'm going to give myself permission to break down, especially if it was a very traumatic loss or a very recent loss. Maybe I'm going to cry at Christmas, and that's okay. It's really important to be gentle with yourselves as you're grieving and allow yourselves that time to do what you need to do, and that time to be okay with not being okay. Very, very important. And kind of connecting earlier to that just being another day. If I've had a lot of loss, and if I'm really, really grieving, and if I just want to curl up in a ball and stay to myself and not talk to anybody, I probably need to do the opposite of that. I probably want to try to not be alone all day, especially if there's prior depression, anxiety, other mental health challenges. I probably don't want to close myself in a closet and just spend the day there. It's going to get worse. So really planning ahead and preparing for that as much as possible too. So as far as the holidays go, again, I know I kind of touched on a lot of different topics. I hope those were helpful. The last slide is just going to be some resources. So some of the ones I used in making this presentation, some of them are other ones that'll hopefully be helpful. The Chamber does have a copy of this already. Some of the formatting might be a little different, but other than that, it should be the same. So you will have access to these resources after the presentation too, and hopefully they are helpful for you. If there are any questions, I'm more than glad to have them now. And if not, I'll just give it a couple minutes for some questions to roll in. If not, I will let you go about the rest of your days, and I really appreciate your time. Just give it about a minute if anybody has any questions. And if you think of any later, the chamber can definitely always forward them to me, and I can certainly get back to you as well. And I'm not seeing anything coming across in the chat. Again, please feel free to reach out to Abby if you have any questions for me that you think of after this presentation. If not, I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday. Take care.